Okay, July the 30th, Sunday evening, about an hour after the weekly open. Let's go through the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. So before I get into anything serious, hopefully everybody had a good weekend. Didn't really look at charts at all, and definitely continues to validate my thesis that trading weekends is completely pointless. Bitcoin traded in a nice tight range. Really nothing to note except for Sunday. Nice wipe and sell off into the comp low. Noteworthy open interest wipe across the markets, which is definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm going to lean into that this week, potentially. Hopefully, the momentum that we've gotten at the beginning here is sustainable, and we should have a good week ahead of us. So I do plan to get active this week. Let's go ahead and get into the news events. So there's a couple different things that we don't care about, maybe a thing or two that we do. On Tuesday, there's U.S. unemployment. I don't really care about that. The main thing to note this week is going to be on Thursday, OPEC meetings. The time is not necessarily locked in, but I do think that this is probably our main events to pay attention to this week and potentially respect with regards to holding leveraged positions. Other than that, I don't really care about anything else, right? We do have a, Bank of England, policy discussion on Thursday as well. I don't think that's really going to matter too much. U.S. unemployment, the actual official rate will be coming out on Friday. That might be something that matters, but really I think it's just the OPEC meetings. Yeah, that's pretty much it though. Let's go ahead and get into the markets. Let's do a light rundown on the boomers really quickly. So, immediate glance at the boomer indexes, it's the same lesson that we've been going over for several months now. If you're shorting these things, you love pain and you need to go seek help. If you're trading these markets actively, it's long continuation only. Selling at the top is for egomaniacs, right? If you want to make money, you play continuation. If you want to collect clout on social media, then you try to sell the top and you get stopped out 25 times and eventually you catch the right top and you get all your clout. Personally, I don't care about that style of trading. I want to make money. So if I was actively trading these things, I would just be doing continuation. I think the more confident I get with saying what I just said, we are, more likely to actually be approaching that market cycle top. As people get arrogant about that kind of stuff, definitely a thing to read into, but it is what it is. I'm not really trading these markets, so I don't really care. I think that it's pretty clear that they're going to keep trading up for the time being. Everybody thinks they're Michael Burry, and honestly, he's a cautionary tale, so it is what it is. Go ahead and get into Bitcoin. This is the market that we actually care about. A couple different things to cover. Let's run through the high time frame first. So as far as I'm concerned, like we had talked about on both streams last week, a few kind of key scenarios that we're looking for are, either downside continuation or reclaiming the range that we just broke down from. At the beginning of the breakdown, I was pretty confident that we would see continuation. The way that price is developing over the past, week or so, I'm kind of thinking that we're getting a fuck you range reclaim soon. And if that's the case, definitely meat's going to be back on the menu. So if we continue downwards, I think that the play is probably going to be losing downside momentum around 28 and rounding out into the mid 27s probably before we would get something similar to what we saw in June, and continue because the uptrend is still very much intact. I think, like I've covered in the last couple of outlooks, that there's been obvious signs of momentum loss. And, the expansion of this last, impulse up has been pretty weak compared to the two previous ones. So the trend weakening is definitely apparent. But that doesn't matter if the trend is weakening. I still want to continue to lean into the trend. So I want to present a scenario where, we're at a local bottom right now and we reclaim the range, and I'll be presenting that argument more clearly when we look at the medium time frame. But yeah, basically the TLDR on high time frame is that there's obvious momentum loss as we're trading up, but the trend is up and it's been up all year long. So I'm not trying to call the top on anything. I really like to lean into the approach of most of my bearishness, especially when we're in uptrend. Anytime I'm bearish, it's really only to protect myself. It's not really to, profit from the downside. So, nothing's really changed with the higher time frame outlook. It's still pretty clearly an uptrend. I think that as we push later into Q3, that might change. Ultimately, I think that if we trade lower, we're in that same scenario like we were in the middle of Q2, where we're either looking for a dead cat into the HVN or, trend continuation up into the 34s or 35s potentially. So let's go ahead and zoom in to the lower time frame and make some more clear arguments. So let's go to the medium. So these are the 3 key plays that I'm looking for this week. So one, which I don't really consider that likely, but it's always a possibility. Don't really pay attention to the 1, 2, 3. It's not really an order of importance or anything like that, or likelihood. It's just the order that I drew them in. I think that 1 is probably the least likely, which is basically us doing a range low retest or attempt at reclaiming the range and getting bonked down. It's always possible, and I have seen this before, so I don't want to write this off as something that's not going to happen, although I would consider 2 and 3 to be the more probable scenarios. So it is always possible that we kind of trade up, get bonked off the quarterly, get bonked off the HVN, attempt to reclaim the value area low, and just get rejected. And that's, what we could see for downside continuation in the, 28s and 27s like I had originally suspected. The way that this range is shaping up, though, I'm definitely leaning more towards the range reclaim. I don't want to get ahead of myself and, put too much risk on or anything, and end up, taking on a flesh wound or anything. But that is, one of the key things I'm looking for this week is to see, we had some momentum come in on Sunday off the back of short squeezing. If we can see some continuation off of that and some sustained momentum, see the VWAP, the fresh VWAP continue to get held, then I do think play number 2 is potentially on the table. I'm obviously going to always lean into setups like like number 2 coming in, just because that's the main way that I'm able to eat in these markets is these kind of scenarios. So I'm instinctually going to lean into those, but I do want to present the counter argument that we always could just be beginning, if the steam gets lost on this and there's just no more buying and all the buying at the beginning of the week was just shorts getting squeezed, then us rounding out, below the range low and continuing down is also a possibility. So TLDR is, full up, trade up into the range, attempt to reclaim it and get bonked down, successfully reclaim it and do trend continuation, or the more likely of the 2 bearish scenarios is the kind of weaker round out and roll over later in the week. So that's it for the Bitcoin stuff. Let's go ahead and get into alts. For more information, check out the Paragon group with the link below, where I cover everything from how I trade to how you can develop your own style. My altcoin watch list has more or less stayed the same, but I'm going to go ahead and run through it anyways. So I do have a couple coins on my list for selling. So that's going to be Link, Pepe, and BCH. These are the ones that I'll probably look to short if I get bearish for some reason. Right now, I would consider myself to be bullish / neutral. I'm definitely not super bearish in this moment, but that's always subject to change. So if I do get bearish, what I'm going to look to short is going to be things like Link, because the risk is really well defined. I think that the market's probably going to drift up a little bit before I was to get bearish anyways, so I could probably get closer to my invalidation of the range high anyways. So I like shorting Link. To be honest, I think that shorting Link when the market is bearish is been pretty reliable over the past, say 2.5 years or something. So I'm going to lean into that. Let's look at Pepe as well. Pepe, really had a rough go at it recently. Some of these altcoins actually look pretty good, but like I argued in last week's outlook, Pepe just became a very overly crowded trade. If you look at open interest and you look at the price structuring, I mean, that's what happens when something becomes overcrowded. Too many people aping into longs on perps, and now structure looks really bad. So basically, as long as we're trading below the anchored, below, quarterly's bearish, below the anchored, and below the HVN, this is pretty bearish structuring. So I think that Pepe will continue to trade downwards. It's got a pretty healthy amount that it can continue to go down, probably 25%. So if it does have any, upwards, trades upwards, the risk is going to get pretty well defined at that point. The last one that I really like for shorts is BCH. I like how BCH is setting itself up by trading upwards right now, so it's going to definitely provide a decent short setup if I get bearish. The original thesis was, losing the HVN, the quarterly, got pretty bearish following a really strong Q2, Q3, looking not so great. I have this kind of magic line in the sand around 280. So if we start to get above 280, then, I would probably change my stance on it. But as long as we're trading upwards, and structure looks bad, then I think that this is a pretty good short / hedge coin. I think Dogecoin's another pretty decent one. It's definitely in a tricky area right now where it has pretty significant resistance from the yearly VWAP. However, having said that, there's been some funky shit going on with Twitter and Elon, and basically all it takes is Elon to say one thing about Doge and this thing's going to send. So I think that having minor Doge exposure, either lower leveraged or non-leveraged perps, or potentially even spot, I think is a pretty reasonable scenario, because we could just use the quarterly VWAP in this HVN as invalidation, which I know that's pretty steep in terms of percentage, probably 7-8%, but I think that, yeah, Doge is definitely one to pay attention to right now. I still continue to think Solana in the $24 to $23 range is still pretty solid. The VWAP structuring is looking pretty bullish. It doesn't really have hardly any significant resistance right now, because we kind of swept into that major supply. So I don't really think that this supply is going to hold us back anymore. If we look at it, let's let it redraw. I mean, there isn't, from the more recent price structuring, there isn't too much resistance. If we zoom out a little bit more, it's going to definitely present a little bit more resistance with this HVN up, or this low volume node, excuse me. But I like the structuring on this one. It definitely became crowded, and that's why it got blown out so badly to the downside. But yeah, structure continues to look good on Sol. So it's a good one. Last interesting one is going to be Ripple. This thing has been pretty much a dud recently, ever since the, Ripple news came out. The vol pretty much died on it. But, I'm probably not interested in trading it myself, but it's got to be respected as something that is potentially a decent setup. If it starts to reclaim the quarterly, then it's starting to look pretty bullish. As it stands, though, it looks almost bearish, like it's accepting, into the low volume. So that would represent a pretty good short to trade all the way down to like 55. So I consider this one to be interesting. It's kind of diddle in the middle where it could go either way. If I start to get bearish on Bitcoin, then this might be a potential, one to get added to the sell list. That's pretty much it for the shitcoins. I don't want to keep rambling forever. I'm keeping an eye on my bottomed list. There's a couple of coins that are looking aight right now. And then basically the rest of the market looks like ass. So these are pretty much the only coins I have any interest in, the ones that I've shared. I did go ahead and do a full rundown where I looked at all of them, but to be honest, almost all the other altcoins look exactly the same, and they look like dog shit. There's no beating around the bush with that. So that's it for the week, guys. Good luck out there. Cheers.